What's up, Spartan fans? We're coming to you live, post-game straight from CEFCU Stadium, following the season opener with San Jose State and Central Michigan. The Spartans take themselves a tough loss here in their home opener, 16-14. My man Pio Romo to my right just got done calling the game on the KSJS airwaves. Good call, Pio. I mean, just overall a tough loss for this group tonight. We're going to definitely get into, just overall, just the body of work that the Spartans had. There was obviously a whole lot of buzz with this team. Week one, you feel good about yourselves, flex your muscles, potentially against this MAC team that's been on the struggle bus. And, I know we talked about it a ton during our broadcast about, just all the moving parts with Central Michigan. First-year head coach Matt Trinkle. They bring in Jim Chapin, offensive coordinator, Sean Cronin, defensive coordinator. What are they going to run? What's the quarterback situation looking like? Over the course of the week, you start to see Central Michigan, hey, we might roll out 3 quarterbacks in this game. Joe Labus, Jaden Glasser, Angel Flores, just a plethora of different options. But this ground attack for Central Michigan really proved to be the difference in this one. What was it, 236 rushing yards or something along those lines for the Chippewas? Just astronomical numbers. Just overall, your takeaways. I know we talked about it on our post-game radio show, but for the audience on our side here, just overall your takeaways on what was a tough 2-point loss here in the home opener.
Well, there's 2 sides to the story, 2 sides to a team, the offense, defense. And then the third member of the team that's not mentioned so often that we are definitely going to talk about, that's the special teams. We'll start on the offense. Listen, no question, the offense here struggled today against a MAC opponent, which, by the way, Vegas had them as 12-point favorites and only able to muster up 2 touchdowns against Central Michigan, which, like Nick just mentioned, has been a team who hasn't won a home opener or a season opener in so long. It's been over
they haven't won a road game
since
September 23rd of 2023 against South Alabama. So that's a non-conference game. I understand they schedule tough non-conference games. Like they're going to Pitt next week. They're playing Michigan in 2 weeks. But that is just some astronomical numbers. The fact that they didn't even win a game in the MAC on the road. We already know those games are coin flips on those Tuesday, Wednesday nights in the middle of nowhere in Michigan in 30-degree weather, right? So, yeah. That's incredible. That's an incredible stat that we stumbled upon.
And that kind of puts it into perspective for those of you watching. And look, listen, you have a team like Central Michigan who's been on the struggle bus, like you mentioned. They're going to want to end that streak. They're going to come into CEFCU Stadium. They're going to play hard. They're going to fight. They're going to do everything to get that win. And when your offense comes out and starts as slow as it did, well, it's just not going to end well for San Jose State. You want to quell a feisty team like Central Michigan, you have to come out guns a-blazing. And Walker Egan in the offense just started out way too slow in the first half. They picked things up in the second half. Now, of course, shout out to Scudero, almost 200 receiving yards on the night. He did his part, but overall the offense just couldn't get things going. In particular, that run game in the first half struggled heavily. In the second half, did a little bit better. But overall, the offense was just wildly inconsistent in this game. And against a MAC foe like Central Michigan, it just got me worried for what's going to happen in conference play. And now we can talk about the defense as well. Listen, 236 rushing yards were given up tonight. Last year, these Spartans were one of the worst teams in all of FBS in terms of run defense. So we knew it was something that was going to be a point of weakness for this team heading into the season. I just didn't expect it to be this bad. It was 236 rushing yards to the ground at one point. At one point, folks, Central Michigan had more rushing yards than San Jose State had passing yards, and it just puts that into perspective. And it's going to be scary down the road because now now these teams, San Jose State is going to play in the season down. They know their kryptonite, and it's certainly something Derek Odom is going to have to fix quickly if you want to stay on track.
Yeah, well, let me tell you this much. Trey Cornish and Ari Biggins, those guys were impressive. And, that offensive line was doing a whole lot of dirty work for those guys up front. Trey Cornish was at Tulane last year. He backed up Mekhi Hughes, one of the best running backs in the nation last year. He's at, Oregon now. That guy was a beast. He was backing him up. So Trey Cornish never really got, a bulk of the load. And then you see what he brings tonight. He had 98 yards. I mean, he had like 16 carries, something along those lines. Like, he was controlling the game. Biggets is kind of like, okay, like he's a team captain, well respected within the room. Kind of comes in, backs him up, does some good stuff there. But it was the Trey Cornish show for about a quarter and a half there. And we gotta talk about is just with San Jose State and their offense, right? Because I was telling you this during one of our late game scenarios in the fourth quarter, right? And that is with the Spartans. You've been working all for the most part since like the spring game, and even going back further all the way to February, March, on what the wide receiver room is going to look like. Because when you lose Nick Nash and you lose Justin Lockhart, it is just a lot to reload. And, coming in, you bring in Leland Smith from Purdue. You see the high upside that he brings. Danny Scudero, him coming from him being a San Jose kid and him torching the Spartans last year in week 1 a year ago, and again as a Sac State Hornet. I mean, you see the upside, and you bring in Matthew Coleman for what he did in the Hawaii Bowl, Malachi Riley from his production at Arizona, and you're thinking, okay, maybe we could get some parts here. And then Matthew Coleman goes down, Malachi Riley goes down. Those guys didn't return, by the way. And, all of a sudden, we're digging deep in our depth charts. I can tell you right now, we didn't have Tagovailoa Awasoa listed on our chart. We had to go digging for him. Tua's cousin, right? He all of a sudden is emerging right now. And Kyrie Scholes is all of a sudden wide receiver 2, Danny Scudero's wide receiver 1. Leland Smith that all of a sudden has to come before his eyes and do some work. And then all of a sudden you're not working with these guys, right? Because I told you, like, Tagovailoa was probably working with Robert McDaniel or Xavier Ward for that matter. He probably didn't get too many reps with Walker Egan. And especially when it's an 11-on-11 game, it's one of these situations, right? It doesn't matter what you do in practice. You can't replace live game reps. And you saw that tonight. And when you're going up against a feisty defense that the Chippewas brought to the table, it was just tough slating for this group. What'd you think of the Walker Egan decisions in the first quarter, second quarter? He had 2 picks in this game. He had the one fumble. Ruski there at his own 20-yard line wasn't really good. I mean, I thought Walker settled in a little bit later, but not the most cleanest decisions early.
So, listener, Walker Egan, he pretty much won the starting job last year at the end of the season. He was going to be the starter this season. We all knew that at the end of the Hawaii Bowl. He comes in, he throws 2 picks. Now, I can't basically blame Walker Egan 100% on this. I mean, the first interception was thrown off by a back judge, taking him off his footing.
Wild play, by the way.
And then in the second interception was just a great read by Elijah Ricard. But at the end of the day, what I noticed with Walker Egan is that he's just staring down his reads for way too long. And that's why in that first half, that Michigan defense was able to jump on the ball so well, because they were just reading his eyes and they were seeing he was looking towards the receiver. And just when you have a quarterback who does that, visor or not, you know where he's throwing the ball, and it becomes as easy as, well, I guess pretty much anything easy you can think of to pick that ball up. And that's the reason for his 2 interceptions. Now that fumble, I mean, it came from the blind side, so you can't really fault him. Overall, the stat line from Walker Egan is very reminiscent of last season. Nothing has gotten worse. Nothing has really improved, dare I say. It's just been the same old Walker Egan that we've been used to seeing. Obviously, over the course of the season, you want to see him improve, and he's certainly going to have to improve if San Jose State wants to win these games. They're going against Texas next week. You know what? I hate to be that guy, but it's going to be
an uphill battle.
It's going to be an 0-2 start season for San Jose State, and so against Central Michigan, a game they should have won. Now you've got all these question marks down the road. Against Idaho, it was an easy win, but Stanford was a toss-up. They beat them last year. Everyone's saying, oh, they can do it again. But
all of a sudden, that Stanford game becomes a little interesting.
It becomes a little interesting. Now, as San Diego State was picked last, now that even becomes interesting. Now you asking yourself, well, is this as easy as we thought it was going to be this season? If you guys have seen the schedule, it's quite forgiving.
Right.
So this loss isn't necessarily the end of the world. It's the first game of the season, the first loss of the season. It's fine. It's first game jitters. You're getting all that stuff out of the system. Maybe these new guys we talked about on the ride here, they're new additions in the spring. These transfers from the wide receiver room maybe haven't got enough time with Walker Egan, so they're still learning the playbook, still learning their quarterback. You can chalk it up all to that. As time continues on, it will improve. But just know, guys, it's not the end of the world. They very well could win out after week 2, okay?
Yeah.
Because they're not going to beat Texas in Texas, but they very well could go on a 10-game winning streak. Will it happen? Probably not. I see maybe an 8-9 win season, hopefully 7, but at the very least, bowl eligibility should be the goal.
Well, I'll tell you what, the expectations are most certainly higher. And, you look at the way the Boise State played yesterday, you're thinking, okay, maybe you're feeling a bit better about yourself. You see UNLV couldn't tackle against Idaho State last week. Obviously, we're here. We didn't get to see the Sam Houston State game today, but they won pretty good with margin. We'll see what the rest of the league looks like. But this is just one of those games, man, where, there's so many decisions. I told you this on our post game on KSJS, and that was the decision on 4th and 1 by Matt Drinkle to go for it at his own 29. And I told you, there's a difference between aggressiveness and recklessness, and whether he gets it or not. Maybe you're having a different conversation about yourself, but that was a decision where I thought about it after. I was all you come from Mount Pleasant to San Jose, you come here to win the football game, and that decision from Drinkle told me Central Michigan came here to win, and we're probably, if we don't convert here on the 4th and 1, we're probably going to lose the game. And if we are, then we could go on one of those drives. That's honestly, San Jose State was looking pretty promising to go on that 7-minute drive and chunk out the clock and get yourself an insurance on what was a 1-point lead at that point, and take some time out of the clock for what was an explosive offense, but an explosive offense that used tons of clock. And that 4th and 1 play by Drinkle to ultimately keep it with Jaden Glasser, just what a play call and what a conversion, because that was a 7-minute and 14-minute scoring drive that ultimately resulted in a field goal. But man, that was just massive for what Central Michigan was trying to do there. And look, you see the numbers from Biggins and Cornish and Angel Flores. I mean, it was to the point where you knew what Glasser was coming into the game for. You knew what Flores was coming into the game for, and you knew what Joe Labus was going to do when he was out there. I want to get your take on the Tame Amasone edition, because this was a guy he's not QB2. You can argue, is he QB3? I mean, obviously we're not going to ask for that information. I mean, I would say the way Robert McDaniel was spinning the ball at spring and fall camp, he might have had the edge, but that was something that was way off the radar. And kudos to you for pointing it out immediately live on the air, because that was something that I didn't recognize on first glance, that they were pulling Walker in that situation to ultimately just change, just the game flow of everything. But that's a kid that he showed flashes in the spring game and was definitely throwing a deep ball. But wow, you want to talk about a change of pace. 5 carries, 23 yards. And I believe it or not, that was kind of really when the SJSU offense kind of got out of their own way there and, ultimately kind of picked things up for what was a sluggish first half.
Yeah, so Walker, you get 2 picks in the first half. I kind of floated the idea that maybe it would be time for a quarterback change. Not a foreign idea to this coaching staff. They did it last year, and we saw Emmett Brown leave the program for Coastal Carolina because of it. We saw Egit emerge as a starter because of it. And then in the start of the second half, you see Tama Amisone out there in the huddle. And at first thought, you're like, okay, this is happening. They're making a quarterback change, but he's only out there for 3 plays. They're all quarterback keepers, RPOs, designed for Amisone's skill set. So hindsight is 20/20, but really they were just using him in special packages. Sort of like I mentioned this on the air too. So if you follow the 49ers, how Trey Lance was used when he was with Kyle Shanahan in those certain types of packages. And you're absolutely right for pointing that out, by the way, that at that moment when Amisone stepped out onto the field and you got a couple good runs in, that is when the offense started to take the tides changed towards San Jose State's favor at that moment. And if it weren't for Amisone, I think this result would have been a lot worse.
Yeah, to kind of change the Spartans' momentum a little bit. I don't know, because they were rolling him out there for like the final drive, right? In the fourth quarter, I'm like, whoa, he's out here running first and second down, and then they brought in Walker Egan for the 3rd and 4 play, and I'm like, whoa, okay, this is a little bit interesting. The fact that they're going to it and doing it down this route this late in the game. Third quarter, I really didn't mind it, but I'd much rather have Walker have the momentum, throughout the entirety of that drive. I mean, it was crazy that they drove down the field in that spot in late in the fourth after Central Michigan settled for 3. The ball gets to our vantage point, and from what I heard, the ball got tipped. We didn't really have a good look of it from our vantage point in the box, but my guess is that 30, or what was it, 28-33. I don't have the exact numbers in my head. It was a chip shot field goal regardless. That one got tipped at the line by Dennis Lynch's field goal attempt. And then it was quite honestly a Christmas miracle. They got the ball back. I think you were saying, hey, the game's over, and the ESPN Power Index had a 99.9% CMU victory. It is just crazy that the ball that SJSU got the ball back in that spot. That's why you have to keep your 3 timeouts late in the game. Well, I guess SJSU only had 2 in that spot late, but it was just crazy. The helmet flying off on Central Michigan to stop the clock in a bizarro way, and I mean, wow, like that was crazy. They even got the ball back with like less than a minute.
It was a crazy sequence of events in that fourth quarter. You're watching the ESPN analytics, Central Michigan, a 99.9% chance to win. And then 5 minutes later, all of a sudden, San Jose State has a 50% chance to win on that last, on that field goal attempt by Dennis Lynch. Of course, we know how that ended up. The special teams, by the way, we got to see some better work from the O-line there. The first one,
the protection
tipped. We need some better protection for Lynch, and Lynch has got to settle in. I can't really blame him this much. He should have never even been in that position had the offense, been more consistent. And then also, it's a starting kicker. It's his first year here. I mean, you immediately put into a high pressure situation. Not many are going to succeed in those. And so you feel bad for the kid, but at the end of the day, it's not really his fault. He shouldn't have been in that position either way. The offense should have done its job in the first half, and the defense should have done theirs. And then we can also kind of use that as a segue into the penalties. Now, Central Michigan had 7, and San Jose State only had 4, so far less. But you can argue that the San Jose State penalties were far more impactful for the wrong reasons. I can think off the top of my head at least 2 that were drive killers.
100%. Yeah, the personal foul, I think it was, on one of our backup linemen. I'm forgetting off the top of my head who it was. And then they had the holding penalty late in the fourth quarter. Those were drive killers, man. And, man, just the way the offense was going, especially with the injuries, like, and I understand, like, whatever. It's 2 wide receivers injuries. Like, everyone's been preaching about the depth. Like, things have, like, it's next man up mentality. But, I mean, you lose Matthew Coleman and Malachi Riley. Those are big losses. And then all of a sudden your scouting report becomes a little bit thinner. You could focus a little bit more on a guy like Leland Smith. Just those penalties were drive killers. Those were definitely like penalties that you look back on and you'd be like, wow, like if we don't make that play or that play, we're in a different circumstance here. What'd you just think of the wide receivers? Obviously, Danny Scudero, this kid. I mean, we had the stat line up.
I'll tell you right now.
Yeah, well, we get the stat line back up, and 9 receptions, 189 yards, and a touchdown. What'd you make of the former Sacramento State Hornet in his Spartan debut?
I believe at half he had like 132 yards, and I told Nick over here, I'm like, listen, is it time to start looking at the individual records section of our game notes? I mean, he was just insane and an absolutely pleasant surprise. Listening when I was doing my research for this game, and we're looking at all the receivers that came in the transfer portal. Of course, the marquee name was Leland Smith coming from Purdue, and we knew that he was going to be impactful in this offense. And then you look at Danny Scudero, and you knew that he was going to be the guy in the slot over Matthew Coleman. Maybe those 2 shared snaps, but then Matthew Coleman went down, and so it was all Scudero's position from that point on. And he just got his opportunity, he took it, and ran away with it. And there were 2 beautiful deep balls that he came down with, and then, of course, that touchdown cast over the middle. Broke some ankles on his way to the end zone, and this kid is a pleasant surprise. It's going to be interesting to see I mean, it might be a bit early for this, but I don't think San Jose State is going to keep Danny Scudero if he, chooses to play another year.
Yeah, that's a conversation for another day.
That's a conversation for
another day. He's a San Jose kid, San Jose native. I don't think we need to jump the gun that quick, but regardless, I think he was a terrific addition. Everybody knew that he was going to be one of the top wide receivers in this room this year. Coach Stutzman said when I talked to him a few weeks ago, he was on my radar when I was coaching at Texas State 2 years ago, and he said I knew I wasn't going to be able to get a Bay Area kid to Texas. So when I came to San Jose and he was at Sac State, I was kind of waiting for him to hit the portal. And when he hit the portal, you notice he was the first one to commit. He committed like a day after the bowl game, if you recall, everybody. And Coach Stutzman was definitely keeping his tabs open on Danny Scudero for quite a while. And when you kind of see that decision come as early as it did, it kind of makes sense in hindsight now. So. I mean, he's been awesome. I mean, Leland Smith, that snag, I mean, that was one hell of a catch in the fourth quarter. I know the Spartans did get points on it, but that was definitely something. But I have to say, like, you could definitely see that Walker and Leland Smith are still trying to work it out. I know that they've been saying that the chemistry's been good and it's been growing, but like, there's nothing like live game action, like I said. And there was just a couple miscommunication plays, I thought, between Walker Egan and Leland Smith.
No, absolutely, and it's something you expect. They haven't been together a while, so you typically see in first games. Leland Smith not too familiar with Walker Egan, but as time goes on, those two will get settled and more accustomed to each other. But there certainly was no problem between Egan and Scudero. Of course, with Nick Nash gone and Justin Lockhart gone, the question is, listen, who's going to step up into that Nick Nash role, into that Justin Lockhart role? Will it be one receiver, or are we going to see the whole platoon? Kind of split the load. And so far this season, it's Scudero who's putting up Nick Nash numbers. And will he keep the pace the rest of the season? Not sure. It remains to be seen. I mean, they've got a tough game next week against Texas. It's going to be hard to do that against that secondary that they have over there in Austin. But either way, one of the silver linings from this game, one of the positive takeaways is that that you've got your guy, Danny Scudero.
Yeah, I mean, man, there was some plays that, like, I thought the offensive line didn't play terrible tonight. I thought, like, there was some breakdowns, some plays. We talked about the penalties, because there was a lot of positive, chatter about, hey, the offensive line, they returned 4 guys, like roster continuity, like they've played a lot of snaps together. There was a few breakdowns here and there. I thought, Walker made some good plays, navigated outside the pocket. Man, there was that one play. I think it was the deep ball to Scudero, or was one of them where the Spartans turned over Angel Flores 4th and 1, right? And they were out in their own 1 yard line. They ran a play to get out of there with Floyd Chalk, and it was like a second or third down, and in like a split second, Walker got the ball off because one of the defensive ends for Central Michigan was like coming in a hurry. I mean, that was a really nice play. I thought the O-line, did some good things. The run game, for how dynamic. They said that we wanted to run the ball a little bit more. The numbers didn't really jump off the page. Floyd Chalk had a couple good, rushes that he kind of made on his own. But this was, from a run blocking perspective, I thought things could have been a little bit better there because I thought they could have dictated some things there, especially the way the wide receiver injuries happen and things changing on the fly there.
Yeah, I just won't be too harsh on the O-line, because Central Michigan as a program is putting players in the NFL, particularly from the trenches, O-line and that D-line.
Yeah.
Of course, with that rush game, that performance they put up, obviously the O-line was performing very well. That D-line, front seven, has always been a Central Michigan staple, and it was on display here. So one of the better, front sevens in really college football is Central Michigan. So you can't fault the offensive line, for not being able to, do much against that vaunted Chips defense. But in the end, it was a decent performance. In the beginning of the game was a bit shaky, but, as time went on, as jitters, butterflies left the stomach, you get used to the stadium, the lights start to dim a bit, and things get going. The offensive line definitely improved.
Back up your point on the Central Michigan defense. Like, this was the numbers last year because they brought back pretty much the same personnel from last year to this year. They didn't lose anybody in the portal. 7th nationally in tackles for loss per game at nearly 8 a game, second best in the sacks amongst the MAC, and they were number 26 nationally in third down defense. Like at 33%. So like those are some pretty damn good numbers. So CMU's defensive, front seven is definitely a strength. You saw that tonight. Danny Scudero torched that secondary. That's for damn sure. I mean, man coverage, one-on-one. He was taking him out to the woodshed, but there was just not enough plays down the stretch. And I thought, man, are they going to keep? I was like, man, Danny Scudero's got 8 yards on that final drive. What'd you think of that whole sequence? Like, because we knew they had no timeouts. They were getting first downs. Like the clock stopped. We know that anyone that watches college football knows the rule. But man, that was. I understand they still got the field goal off, but like that just seemed like a wild, scramble. Did they get the playoff? Did they spike it? Central Michigan was like, the game's over. The game's over. The back judge is holding everybody up. The code red situation there.
Definitely adds to the insane fourth quarter that it was. Like you mentioned, the back judge kind of griefed San Jose State a little bit, taking his sweet time to place that ball. The clock was still running, and they just barely got that off. 1 second left. But there's not much you can do there. It's out of their control for San Jose State. I mean, you can't really have the refs do what you want to do. Things like that happen and have happened with referees in the past and will continue to in the future. But, to add to your point, it was just an insane sequence. Extremely lucky that they were even able to get a field goal opportunity in the first place. But that's just college football for you. And, you're not gifted opportunities like that often. And when you do, you got to take advantage of them. But San Jose State, unfortunately, they were, gifted ribbon gifts at every stop on that last drive. But unfortunately, it just couldn't come through.
Well, I'll tell you what, the Mountain West is not doing themselves any favors right now. Boise State loses at USF. San Jose State loses tonight against Central Michigan. UNLV's 2-0, but they haven't really looked pretty. Hawaii beat Stanford, probably the best win right now. We'll see what the rest of the league does tomorrow. Some people got UTEP beating Utah State. Fresno's got a coin flip game versus Georgia Southern. Like, I know that, maybe Spartan fans, just fans amongst each other have animosity within each other because they're conference rivals and such, but this is not a good look for the league that you're losing all these non-conference games right now. Because I'll tell you what, the Americans scored a big win with South Florida beating Boise State. I got to check the Army score because I saw Army and Tarleton were in a crazy game in overtime today. When we're talking college football playoff big picture, Mountain West is not doing themselves any favors. And why I mention this is because this league is up for grabs. I know we're a week in, 2 weeks in technically, but this thing's up for grabs. And all these conference games matter. And when you're losing against the MAC team in Central Michigan, they look great tonight. But the win projection is not high for them this year. If they make a bowl game, I think it'd be a miracle for this team because they got at Pitt and at Michigan next. So I would probably say they're 1-2 at that point. This is going to be one of those losses that you look back on this year, and especially the way that Central Michigan goes. If they get 6 wins, like I said, it would be crazy. But it's going to be one of these games where you look at the metrics and the strength of schedule and all this other stuff, and you'd be like, wow, that's incredible. But yeah, that's going to do it for us. Tough game for San Jose State tonight, 16-14 loss. We got to get out of here. People want us out of here. So we'll definitely be talking very soon. Pio Romo, pleasure calling the game with you tonight on KSJS. Thanks for hopping on with us here on this platform. And we'll definitely be chatting soon, my man.
All right. Make sure you guys subscribe. All right. Red button.
Hey, appreciate the love. That'll do it. Have a good night, everybody. See you on the next one.